Hi, my name is Christine. I'm a demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and this is the Stampin' Blends versus Stampin' Write challenge. Okay, it's not a challenge. I want to show you the difference between our Stampin' Blends alcohol markers and our Stampin' Write markers. So to do this little demonstration, I'm going to be using the Daisy Garden stamp set, which is a giant background stamp. Well, it doesn't just have to be a background. It can be the card itself as well. Is so beautiful. So I'm using the giant block F. This is the largest of the acrylic blocks, and that is what you need for the background stamps. There's a few options, and like I said, I'm calling it a background stamp, and that's what it's classified as because of its size, but you can make beautiful cards with this stamp set. Most of our other background stamps, I'm thinking of the beautiful birch, and there's a really cool tie-dye one right now in the new catalog. Those would normally be used really as a background, whereas this one can be, because it's such a pretty image, it can be the card itself as well. So I'm using my Memento black ink on this. As you can see, I'm just dabbing it along. So I think that's all there. So this is definitely a two-hander. And I'm just positioning that on. Again, I'm not actually making a card with this. This is for display purposes only. For demonstration purposes, I want to show the difference between the two markers. So if we look at our markers, both of them have a sort of paintbrush tip and a thin tip. This one's really fine and is perfect for writing, which is probably where the Stampin' Writes get their name. The alcohol-based marker has a nice paintbrush tip as well, and the other side is a rounded tip. So I just need my Stampin' glasses here, and they are on. So I'm going to start with the blends. What's really nice with these is I'm starting with, they come in a dark shade and a light shade, which allows you to blend the two shades together and get more variation, whereas the Stampin' Writes come in just the one shade. Actually, I'll do the whole flower. So I'm not being super precise with this because I am going to go over it with the lighter shade. And, oh, actually, I just got a really good idea. So if I go over top of the dark shade, the color kind of blends into the lighter shade. Hoping that's coming through on the video. I would, if you were to do, let's say, the whole stamp, I would do sections at a time. It's a lot easier to blend those colors when they are still a bit wet, because these are alcohol markers, they dry very quickly. So if you let the dark shade dry completely, it's a little bit harder to blend in or blend out with that lighter shade. There's quite a bit of line art in this stamp, so it's a bit more difficult to get the full effect, but that is it. So you can see it's darker here and lighter on the outside. I said this was sort of a this versus that, so I'm gonna put a line down here and try to stick with my blends on this side and my writers on this side. I just need a pen. There we go. So blends. This is just an old Sharpie. Okay. Ooh, Sharpies stink, holy jumpins. So that is kind of the idea of the light to dark. So let's see what it does if we just use our Stampin' Write marker. So Stampin' Writes only come in one shade. They are the exact same ink as what's in our ink pads. So really cool thing with Stampin' Writes is that they can be re-inked. There's a video on my YouTube on how to re-ink your Stampin' Stampin' Writes, I'm sorry, Stampin' Writes. It's very simple to do. Now, one thing with these that I'm noticing as I'm going is the color is, you could easily see your brush strokes. It's getting soaked into the paper a lot quicker, and it's not drying the same way because this is regular ink. So it would be really good to do small sections, but maybe not a whole big section. So there's our two flowers. So same color, but this is the, well, it's still very wet as well. So this is the Stampin' Write, and these are the blends. So let's do the center of our flower as well. So I've gone over top of the pink over here and nothing's really happened. Let's put a dab of pink by accident in here and see what happens when we go over it with the Stampin' Blend. So this is the Pale Papaya. So you can see that pink that was there, the dark pink mixed with the Pale Papaya, kind of makes a little bit more of an orange and fades out and into the image, whereas this one is really saturated and in there. I don't think you can see on the video, but the paper has gotten kind of like a wet paper, whereas this one does not do that. If we flip it over, also, these are the alcohol markers. They go right, they just get into the paper and dry quickly, whereas the ink of the Stampin' Writes doesn't go through the same way, which is a bonus, but it's it kind of almost bubbles out the paper, kind of like if you have wet paper. So again, really good to color in small areas, less recommended for the big ones. Another thing that I love to do with my Stampin' Writes, and for that I want to pull in, I'll use the Pale Papaya, and I'm going to use the lighter shade of the Pale Papaya, because I love to make backgrounds with my markers. So I'm using the paintbrush tip and I'm just kind of messy coloring a bit just to go around the outline. I normally do this with like a blue or, okay, a light blue, to kind of give the effect of the sky. But I just want to show you color against color. So that's the Stampin' Blends kind of background technique. And then if I use the Pale Papaya and try this, you can see the color is really dark and doesn't have that same effect. In fact, it's pretty impossible to do. It's just going to be really dark. And again, the paper's getting quite wet and is does look pretty cool with that color though. But you're going to see your brush strokes a lot more than you will with the alcohol marker. All right, so that's that. Now, if we were to do a writing test, let's give these guys a fair shot. Let's see. Pale Papaya. So you can, I'll bring this up to the camera so you can see it a bit better. I should have used the darker markers to do this. So this very much is like a marker. So if you wanted to do like a label, see the difference here? This is nice and My writing's not fabulous, but you can see the difference in the style of the writing just with the tips. So the Stampin' Writes are definitely the go-to for writing, whereas this really looks like a marker. What else? What else are the difference between the two? So another big difference, the blends I talked about come in a light and a dark shade, whereas the Stampin' Writes do not. But the Stampin' Writes come in the color collections. So this is the brand new 2021-2023 color collection. So you get all 5 markers, and I believe that's $20. I should check. Whereas the Stampin' Blends are $12 for the light shade and dark shade together. The exception is the color lifter, which I haven't shown you. I should have marked this page. So the Stampin' Writes for the in color shades, which is 5 markers, are $20. And you can also get the by color collection. So by color collection, so the brights, the neutrals, regals, or subtles. It's the 10 colors for $40 each. So they work out to about $4 per marker. But they need to be bought as the 10 for the collection or the 5 for the in color collections. Whereas the Stampin' Blends are available in just about every color. Not every single one, there are a few omissions, because the light and dark shades would probably look too similar to others. So let's look at the color lifter. So again, this is just to show you. So the color lifter is white. Just for fun, I'm going to try it on the other one, though I know it won't work. So our color lifter, it's not going to lift it completely on the really bright pink here, but you can see that it does lift, whereas this one does absolutely nothing. So on a lighter color, like the pale papaya, for instance, it would erase it completely. In fact, well, maybe not completely, but just about. So if you're coloring along and you go outside your lines, you can just use the color lifter and make that color go away. So once this dries, you're barely going to see the papaya. So another cool trick with the Stampin' Blends that you cannot do with our Stampin' Writes is coloring our ribbons. So if you want to color coordinate your project, you can color your white ribbons just like this, as well as our paler ribbons, any of them really, you can color. So that's a cool option. And the other neat thing that you can do is color our basic rhinestones. So let me just pull out one of those and you'll see what that does. So in order not to damage your marker, try not to use the tip too hard. Just be super gentle on these. But then all of a sudden we've got our pink gem. So really versatile and fun. So the paper is almost dry on this. Not quite dry though. You can still see the wetness around the pale, but you can see that the word pale is almost gone, and you saw how bright this pink was, and it's much less so. Whereas the color lifter on our regular Stampin' Write did not do anything. So both types of markers definitely have a place in your craft room. I use my blends a lot more than my writers. That's just me personally. But and I didn't show you, that's right. One other cool thing with the blends, and I'm just gonna grab another stamp set, I'm sorry. We're gonna use the Timeless Tulips to show you one really cool trick that the blends do that the Stampin' Writes, the Stampin' Writes do that the blends cannot do. and that is to color an image. So this is a photopolymer stamp. It's clear. Well, it once was anyway. They do stain if you use the really bright pinks or reds on the photopolymer stamps. That's why this guy's stained, but it's clean. And so you just have to clean it till the color stops coming off and you're good to go, but it will stain. It's a sign of love because boy, this stamp set gets used a lot. So I have put the color from my Stampin' Write onto my stamp. I'm just gonna blow on it to activate that. So that probably wasn't the best choice for demonstration because these are the, they're super detailed stamps and I have too much ink on here is what's happened. Yeah. All right, a better option because it is really cool. So this stamp set is one of the new ones. I'm just going to do a quick hello stamp. Actually, no. We'll do friend since it's right here. This is the Biggest Wish stamp set. And the reason that didn't work with my tulip is the tulips have very fine lines in them and the color got in there. So that was not the best choice on my part. But with this one, it will work really well. This is a flatter image, so again, photopolymer stamp, but it doesn't have all that tricky line work in it. So I've saturated the stamp. I'm just gonna wet that down, and there we go. So now I've got a nice friend stamped down. It's not as uniform as when you're using the ink pad. It has that more watercolor look to it, which I quite like. So that is something that the Stampin' Writes can do that the blends cannot. So I hope this has helped you a little bit understand the difference between the two types of markers. And please let me know if you have any other questions. I'm definitely happy to answer them. And yes, I hope you found this helpful. Thank you.